And yeah, I will talk about introducing Treblle to Ruby community and my mission in Cactus Code, building a Ruby gem. I'm a part of the Ruby community for quite some time now, but this is the first time I'm on this side of the table. So I would like to say a few words about myself. I'm a part of the Cactus Code. Cactus Code is my brother's company that went from 1 to 35 people in 2.5 years and has even bigger plans for the next 2.5 years. I'm also a part of the Smart Pension, which is a fintech company from the UK with a mission of transforming the pensions and investment system. Funny thing is, I have about 5 years of experience, more or less, but I'm even longer a member of the Ruby community. And I really love our community. That's one of the reasons I started working in it professionally. So, as Vedran said, monitoring, managing, and observing your API is really important for your application. You want to benchmark your endpoints and ensure that they're meeting your performance, expected performance. Also, you want to understand user behavior on it. You want to identify potential problems even before your users or a client. And of course, you want to make your developers happy. Give them the right tools for the job and maximize their productivity. So when we started working on a gem, we had few requirements / goals here. It's quite simple what we want to do to enable Treblle toolsets in our application. It's basically this. Intercept the request that's coming into the application, log the data, send it to Treblle. Simple as that. But also we want to do this in a way to make this logic on a right place, encapsulate it, and meet data privacy, which means masking all the sensitive attributes that you don't want Vedran to see. And of course, one of the really important requirements is easy implementation. So not bigger than 3 minutes to implement this gem to your Rails application and enable Treblle toolsets. At the end, we don't want to make a big overhead on your request, so meeting performance. So this is usual HTTP request response flow without the networking stuff. And we have here a physical network, a physical server, and client makes a request to your application. But before it hits your application, we have web server. And what web server does is it listens to a connection on a socket. It brings the data from the client and serves the HTTP applications. But in Ruby world, this web server is actually a rec web server. And that's a type of server that serves rec-compatible Ruby applications, which means it will also listen for a connection on a socket. It will take the data, it's probably HTTP, it will look at the version, let's say 1.1, and it will create the rec environment variable for you. So this rec environment variable is actually a Ruby hash representation of your HTTP request. It has a bunch of attributes, but here are some of them. So it has a request method, get, path info, root, HTTP version, server name, port, and so on. As I said before, it serves rec-compatible Ruby applications. But what are rec applications? Rec applications are objects that respond to call method and takes exactly one argument, rec environment, and returns this array of 3 items, which is consist of status code, headers, and a response body. Simple as that. So now we have the same flow, but now we know how they communicate between them. So web server invokes the call method on the application with an environment argument and returns the status code, headers, and a body again, which means that your application is also following the rec interface. So, also invokes the call method and expects environment and returns the status code, headers, and a body. But before it hits even your application, we have one more layer between the web server and application. That is middleware layer. So it's a layer between the web server and application. It's a chain. It's a multiple of middlewares. But what is middleware? As I said, it functions as a standalone application that processes requests independently before or after your application. But this middleware is also a rec middleware, which means it's following the same rules. So it responds to the call method, it returns the array of status, headers, and a body, and it accepts application or the next middleware in your initializer, which means that's depending where your middleware is. If it's on the beginning of the chain, it will accept next middleware. If it's last in the chain, it will probably accept your application. Okay, so here we have a code of one really simple custom middleware that has an initializer that accepts application, which can be your application or the next middleware in the chain. It has a call method that accepts rec environment variable, and then it calls again. The app invokes call method with environment variable. So it's chaining up in calling the next middleware. At the end, we expect to return the status, headers, and the response again. You probably already know what this code is doing. It's basically just benchmarking your request and measuring time, how much it took for a response. And then at the end, I'll log it into the console. Okay, Rails is giving us middleware API, which enable us to change this chain however we want. That means we can delete one of the middlewares in the chain, we can add one of them in the chain, or replace them. So if you want to list all of the middlewares in your application, just type Rails middleware in the console and you will get the list. As you can see, there's a few of them here for the authorization, strategy, caching, logging, migration check pending, and so on. And at the end, we are adding our custom middleware at the bottom of the chain. After you install our Treblle Ruby gem, the flow looks like something like this. So again, we have HTTP request response flow. And in this chain, we have Treblle middleware as it intercepts your request, prepare the data from the rec environment variables and response, mask needed data, and then send data to Treblle. Simple as that. Or is it? So we talk about our requirements at the beginning, and one of them is really important, and that's easy implementation to your application, which means you can do this in three steps. First is adding a gem to the gem file, as you know, installing it by bundle install, and the last one is configuring the gem. So let's check the configuration of Treblle. So first two, we have API key and project ID, which will you get from Treblle dashboard. Then you have enabled environments. which enable us to add specific environment that you want to monitor, staging, development, production, whatever you want. Then we have sensitive attributes. Sensitive attributes has a default list of attributes that we have that we want to mask, like passwords or something else, like I don't know, 3 numbers of the card, credit card, and so on. But if you want to change that and add additional top secret custom attributes, you can by this way. And the last one is restricted endpoints and whitelisted endpoints, which means you can configure specific endpoint that you don't want to track, monitor, or you want to monitor. Okay, and this presentation is also appeal for you to give feedback. This is an open source. I have one promise from Radan. If I do this presentation, I will get the feedback from it. So yeah, and why do I think that you need to do that? Because it's really fun to share knowledge and you will learn something from it. I will dive into the code a bit, just speed run it. So this is our repo. Here is the README file, which you can find for the how Treblle works, some of the licenses, MIT security, and so on, configuration of the, and so on and so on. But something that I want to show you is actually our middleware. Which is here. And it has the same thing. Initializer that accepts application or the next middleware. It has a call method that's invoked with the argument environment. And then we have a condition if it should monitor our request. That depends on our configuration, of course. If the environment is enabled or your endpoint is enabled. Next, we can see the call with Treblle monitoring, if it's enabled, and it's quite simple, right? You can see, it's readable enough. But how do we handle monitoring here? So we have a request builder and response builder that takes rec environment and rec response and build our models that fit payload, then generate the payload and dispatch the payload to Treblle. That's about it. I will just dive in how other classes look, just to give you some sense of how we do this. Okay, so this is a building request from the rec environment. We have that we are building some metadata here, headers, body, and so on. The same thing is for the response builder. As you can see, it's built upon of status code, headers, body, size, and so on. Let's take a look how our payload looks. So here we have payload, which we send to Treblle. It has API key, project ID, some metadata, versions, data about the server, language, about the request, response, or errors. And yes, so take a look at this code, give us feedback. One more thing that I want to mention about that was really interested when I was building this gem was appraisals. So appraisals is using our bundler to test different versions of Rails upon of different versions of dependencies. And yeah, that's something that helped me for a better sleep, and knowing that I will not broke your application. Of course, we have here simple workflow that's testing that on different Ruby versions. And yeah, that's it.